And so I worked on that and other experiments on who has OBEs and under what circumstances and so on. So there were plenty of things that I did in those days. Alongside that, I did a few more experiments looking for paranormal phenomena, but again, never finding them. And in the end, this is all about, for me, it's so exciting to actually understand now how out-of-body experiences work and why they come about in the circumstances they do. It's so exciting compared with the completely the tempting but completely vacuous idea that there's this other world and there's astral projection and your astral body goes. Then there's the 7 layers, the astral body and the etheric body and all the other layers of them, and all this stuff invented from people's experiences and from ancient religions tacked together. It doesn't get you anywhere, and it leads you to believe things that simply aren't true. So I do understand why people think it's much more exciting if it's all spooky and weird, but really it isn't. I think real science is much more exciting.
I mean, I think that's debatable, because I obviously agree with that, because I think that understanding mechanism and being able to put things in order is what I'm after. But I think a lot of people crave to live in a magical universe. Like, I had this thought the other day of what it was like as a child to read fantasy books or sci-fi books and having the feeling of what was possible, that went beyond the drudgery of life, that went beyond the minutia of, being a kid growing up in the suburbs, having to go to school and do books and things like that. And so I think that it's the rationalist view of the world where everything can be explained with mechanism is just kind of unsatisfying in a spiritual sense. And I think that
that's no reason for rejecting it. I mean, if it's not true,
of course.
But I
how
think
are the
what I
spiritual
don't know.
experiences not true? That's what I'm having a hard time with. I feel like the fact that they happen makes them true to some.
Hold on. I think.
Oh, for goodness sake. I mean, there's nothing in what I've said that would imply they don't happen. Of course they happen. They happen to something. Somewhere between 10 and 20% of people have had an out-of-body experience. Now, I must say this. An out-of-body experience is defined as an experience in which you seem to perceive the world from a location outside your physical body. Unlike consciousness, we do have a definition. And so if you have that experience of it seeming, and it's seeming real, that's an out-of-body experience. Now, how wonderful it is to be able to have that experience yourself. And if you practice and you do certain things, you're more likely to have them. You talked about a spiritual sense. Well, here we get into a very interesting thing, because some spiritual traditions would say, yes, something has left the body and so on. Others, I think, which are more appeal to me, are if you do these practices of meditation and mindfulness and so on, you are more likely to have these experiences, but they're not important. Like Zen would say, I mean, my training is in Chan, which is the Chinese precursor to Zen, but very similar to Zen. A lot of these things there are said to be there just distractions. The real job is being present, is seeing through the illusion of self, seeing through the illusion of separation of me from everything else, me from everyone else.
But what if the experience allows you to see, right? But don't you think that if the experience allows you to see that revelation, that it's valuable?
It can do, but for a lot of people, they then, if they have an out-of-body experience, very often they then are convinced that they did go somewhere, that they did see something when they got there, that this means that they have a spirit or a soul, that it's going to live after death. And this is a big and live question because of all the work on NDEs, where many of the people, and there aren't that many, but of the few really good people who are working on NDEs, are convinced that they prove life after death. It's a really important question for everybody, really. Is death the end? Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think it is. The illusions go away along with the body dissolving. But that doesn't mean that these kind of spiritually related experiences are invalid. I think they're better used as part of your spiritual path or your development of your insight into your own mind, into the nature of mind, than to think in the kind of old-fashioned way, oh, yeah, this proves my spirit is left. And the traditional view.
Yeah, it's kind of sad how superstition intrudes upon the real value of some of these ancient teachings. You know, when you started off and we were talking about panpsychism, I was struck by how strange it is that humans are coming back around to panpsychism, because it used to be the most popular way of looking at the universe, actually. The entire societies were built upon panpsychist revelations, essentially. And yeah, it's
if I look at, I've got a row of plants there on the windowsill, and the more we learn about plant psychology, if you like, I remember going to a lecture about 20 years ago. It was called The Cognitive Abilities of Plants. And I was like, what? And I rushed along to this, it was a really good lecture. Now the stuff about fungi is amazing. The way they respond through the soil and connect up with other fungi and connect up with trees and share water and all these amazing things. Now, is there something it's like to be a fungus? Well, a fungus will not have an illusion of self. So it cannot be conscious in the way we are, which is utterly distorted, if not entirely constructed, by our false view of what it is to be a self. But does that mean there isn't anything it's like to be it? These are deep and interesting questions, and become more interesting again through doing the science. So going back to what you just said there, of course, sensitive people through the ages will have realized that living things are connecting with their environment, connecting with other living things, and talk about them as though they are like us, in some sense aware. They don't have the sophisticated kind of language that we have now, but that's a very natural human way to feel. And I think now the science is helping us to see why it is a natural way to feel. But it's not because they've got some spooky special thing called consciousness joined on. It's what life does.
You said something interesting about the fungus not having a self. And that's a pretty common... I hear people say that stuff a lot, but I'm not sure that
I didn't say that. I said it didn't have an illusion of self.
An illusion.
Can you elaborate?
It will have boundaries, although a fungus, it depends what kind of fungus, but many of them, it's hard to say where the end of this one is and another one begins. But let's say you've got one that's relatively, as far as it's concerned, it has boundaries. It takes in some things through the membrane and pushes other things out, and it has boundaries. But so does Hydra or any single cell sort of organism still has boundaries. In that sense, you can